Hey, abundant parents, it's Leah. I have Rachel here with Quinlan Tarot, and she is going to share with us in this video the scary cards of tarot and how to kind of introduce those scary cards not only to yourself and to understand that they are there to really help you understand your power in life, but to also help your children understand the beauty and power that they can help you to face. Hey, Abundant Parents, it's Leah. I have Rachel here, and she is our guest on the Abundant Parent Community Workshops. She's doing a workshop all about tarot and introducing it to children as an intuitive tool for them to begin to listen to their inner voice and to trust their intuition. We're going to talk a little bit in this video about the scary cards. There are some cards that at first glance could really be frightening even to a well-seasoned adult, like the Death card, for example. So Rachel's going to talk to us just a little bit about how those scary cards actually don't really have to be scary. And, sometimes how when we have scary dreams, they actually mean the opposite of what we think they might. There's some really interesting messages you can get from the scary cards that don't have to be like, oh my God. So Rachel, thank you for calming us and making us realize the depth of scary cards.
Absolutely. One of the most beautiful things about tarot cards is the fact that they contain quote unquote scary cards. And when you think about your child's favorite TV show, cartoon story, there's something scary in it. There might be a witch, there might be a dragon. And so we use these messages to sort of help us understand what can be a little bit scary and to recognize that these scary things don't hold all the power that we think that they hold. And like you said, adults, we get scared. I mean, when I see some cards, I'm going, oh, okay, so this is the thing that I have to work with now. But it really kind of helps diffuse it. So let's talk about a couple of the cards in the deck.
Okay.
What I love is the way that tarot goes, you don't need to be a seasoned professional to understand what certain cards mean. So here's one card.
And I'm actually just going to hold this up.
Yes.
Now, tarot decks are all different. So this is just one representation. Now, which one is this?
So this is the Nine of Swords.
Okay, so this is the Nine of Swords. Nine of Swords may look different in a lot of different decks, but this one in particular is the Nine of Swords in Rachel's deck that she has here.
So I was doing a reading for a 7-year-old boy recently, and this card came up. And one of the meanings, the traditional meanings of this card is anxiety, sleeplessness, bad dreams, nightmares. And so instead of saying, oh, this is going to be perfect, I was able to have a conversation with him and said, buddy, are you having trouble sleeping?
Poor thing.
And this look just washed over him. And he said, I've been having nightmares and I don't want to tell my mom because I'm trying to be a big boy. But he didn't feel like he had anyone to talk about this with.
And he got that validation that this is a big enough issue that the cards are even bringing it up.
And the fact that this is a card in a deck, it's a picture, it kind of helped him recognize that everybody has trouble with this. He's not alone in this. So one of the biggest messages of seeing these cards that seem scary is that they recognize that we're not alone. This is the human condition, that everybody goes through it. So yes, he's trying to be a big boy, but to recognize that if there's a card in the deck that's talking about nightmares and sleeplessness, that he's not by himself.
There's a lot of other people that are having sleeplessness and nightmares.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
That's great.
There's some other cards. So you mentioned the Death card, which I didn't pull out, but when we see even the word death, I mean, that's a scary thing to think about.
Well, we've been, I think it's our culture too. There's some cultures that are very okay with death, but in most Western cultures, we're very terrified of death. Yes.
And so one of the biggest messages in the tarot, and which is why I love using it with kids, is to recognize that everything is a cycle. So the Death card, if we think about the tarot, there's all of these cards in the deck. If the Death card were the last card in the deck, that would say a lot, but it's the middle card in the deck.
Interesting.
So what does that mean for us? That means that there's a cycle. With every death, it means that we're shedding something and bringing in something new. So for us, when we can talk about death as this is a transformation, this is a change, this is something that feels scary because we don't know what's going to happen next. With death, we never know what's going to happen next. If we're going from one grade to another, that can feel like a death. If we are moving to a new house, that feels like a death. So if we see the Death card, we can say, okay, something's changing. Let's talk about change. Let's talk about the fact that we don't know what's going to happen yet. But isn't that also kind of exciting because there's all this potential before us? So there's some of these cards that can feel and look scary. Another card, the Tower, and I'll let you open this up, is very similar to the Death card in that it represents change.
And we're going to talk a lot. Wow, I can't really get that. There we go. We're going to talk about this a lot more in the workshop. But doesn't this seem so reminiscent of imagery that you see in fairy tales?
Absolutely.
From children?
Absolutely.
Rachel's going to talk a lot about that in the workshop, but I just had to touch on that because it's like, wow.
Yeah, so this does look like a fairy tale card, but it's people that are falling out of a tower. I mean, that's a scary image. And I think at first blush you may think, why would I want to work with a deck that has these scary images? But it's showing us that even if we don't always feel safe in a situation, we can use tools that surround us. So if this is the main, and we'll talk about spreads later too, if this is the main issue in a card of I don't feel safe in my environment, we'll always have ancillary cards around us that show us, okay, well, we know the problem, so let's figure out how we can move through it. We're not ignoring the scariness, but we're saying, okay, what are the tools that we have to move through this scary thing to make us feel like we have more power? It's not about ignoring the scariness, but it's about embracing it and saying, okay, we can grow from this and we can end up better than where we started.
And like you were saying, it's a cycle. And so these are things that you can overcome and reflect back on and know that you've learned from them. And it's beautiful.
And I think it really helps all of us grow up when we recognize, okay, this is a thing that we don't like, but let's move through it. Let's not dwell in it. Let's empower ourselves to take control of a situation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So share with us some of the other what can be considered scary cards. So as people are exploring with their decks, they'll be like, oh, there's one of those scary cards. Not so bad, though.
Absolutely. Some of these cards are really, we get inside of our heads so much. And sometimes I'm a huge believer in positive self-talk and in affirmations.
Oh my gosh.
But I also don't want sometimes the cloud to come over us of just kind of thinking everything's perfect all of the time. So tarot cards are great because they can kind of nudge us to say, hey, pay attention to that thing that you don't want to pay attention to.
Face your demons.
Yes. So this is a great card. This is the Eight of Swords.
This one reminds me of Justice.
It is a lot like
the
Justice.
Symbology of, let's see, is that focused, you guys? Sorry. There we go.
So this is a great card that it looks scary. There's a woman tied up and she's surrounded by swords. So the initial meaning of this card is there's something that you're not looking at and you're feeling trapped. She's blindfolded, she's bound, she feels trapped and helpless. But if we look at this card a little bit more, we see that she's surrounded by swords. So if you put yourself in in her shoes, okay, well, you're surrounded by sharp objects. You could free yourself from this at any point in time. These things that seem scary are actually tools to show us how to get out of a situation where we're blocked. So it's not this main message of, oh, you're not looking at something, you're blocked, have a nice life. It's, but what's the next step? How do we get out of this? How do we move through this as opposed to just feeling prisoner in a situation that doesn't belong to us?
That's beautiful.
So there's a lot of little hints and tricks, and the more that we look at the cards, the more that we see light in cards. And there's a light side and a shadow side to every tarot card. And I think that the more people work with the cards, the more that they can come to some of those realizations that there's a lot of hope in every one of these cards.
Such a beautiful mirror for life, I think.
Endlessly.
Yeah.
Endlessly.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Rachel is our guest on the Abundant Parent Community Workshops. It's a membership. I bring in experts in their field every month to share their expertise to help you as a parent guide not only yourself through this incredible journey that is life, but to also help guide your children and give them the most power over their own life that they can possibly have. You can find Rachel at quinlantarot.com. She's also all over the social media on Instagram, and you can catch her at the workshops at theabundantparent.com. It's under the membership tab. Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you more in the workshop.
Thank you.
Bye.